Leadership is hard. Titles change overnight, expectations pile up fast, and nobody hands you a survival map. That's why Leadership on the Rocks exists. Hi, I'm Bethany Reese, leadership coach, author, and speaker. And for 2 decades, I've been equipping leaders to navigate the wild, unpredictable terrain of leading people. Whether you're a new leader trying to find your footing or a seasoned leader trying to reclaim clarity, this podcast gives you the tools, truth, and encouragement you need to thrive in both your professional and personal lives. Each week, I sit down with leaders who have weathered storms, climbed mountains, and learned what it takes to lead without losing yourself in the process. If you're ready to build steady, grounded, life-giving leadership, this is your place. Let's climb together.
Excellence surrounds us on a daily basis. We just have to be tuned in order to pick it up. Otherwise, it's like that radio wave. Like right now, as we sit here, like there are radio waves all around us and Wi-Fi waves, et cetera. But if you're not on the right frequency, you just miss them. And so for me, some of the greatest lessons I had in my career came from the smallest of moments, literally a whisper that somebody said as I was interacting with them. They said something under their breath and I stopped them and I was curious about what they said. I could have missed that, but I was tuned in.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with author and leadership coach Scott Millson about how leaders can tune in to the everyday lessons that shape excellence in life and leadership. Scott Millson is a mostly retired executive who has dedicated the second half of his career to helping people find their frequency of excellence and grow their careers. He has held many titles along the way, including founder, president, partner, owner, chief operating officer, and before all of those, petty officer, second class, U.S. Navy. Scott has worked with and for world-class organizations and leaders, and now as an author, keynote speaker, and dedicated encourager, he spends his days helping others tune in to the everyday, but not always obvious, crucial lessons of life and leadership. Scott is pleased to have authored his first book, Frequency of Excellence, Tuning in to the Everyday Excellence of Life and Leadership. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Scott. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Bethany. I really appreciate the introduction that was made by our common friends and really appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Absolutely. And I love it. I love that we do have common friends. You know, you can tell a lot about a person by the circles they run in, and Scott has a great circle. So, and I got to say, just hearing your bio, like I'm in awe. You have a massive amount of experience, and I cannot wait to tap into all of your hard-earned wisdom that you've acquired through your life and leadership, because I know it's going to encourage not only our listeners, but myself as well. So can we just start? I love the title of your book. Let's start with the title, Frequency of Excellence, Tuning in to Everyday Excellence of Life and Leadership. Now, here's my question. What does frequency of excellence actually mean? Because when you say leaders need to tune in to the frequency of excellence, I'm thinking of like a radio and I'm thinking, are we talking smooth jazz? Are we talking classic rock? Are we talking like leadership talk radio? So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it is a metaphor of sorts that was shared by me with a mentor of mine. And it was actually, we were in a Bible study together. And he used to talk about kind of the frequency of God. And so it kind of has that as an underpinning here. But so the idea is that, that God is everywhere and we just have to tune in. And so I adapted that as I kind of went through my career. I had this kind of the way I learned. And so it was very kind of you to say, I've had a lot of great experiences. I am nothing without the mentors that shaped me, the people that I was surrounded by. I just had to be smart enough to be tuned in. And so the metaphor that I use throughout my book is excellence surrounds us on a daily basis. We just have to be tuned in order to pick it up. Otherwise, it's like that radio wave. Like right now, as we sit here, like there are radio waves all around us and Wi-Fi waves, et cetera. But if you're not on the right frequency, you just miss them. And so for me, some of the greatest lessons I had in my career came from the smallest of moments, literally a whisper that somebody said as I was interacting with them. They said something under their breath and I stopped them and I was curious about what they said. I could have missed that, but I was tuned in. When I was in boot camp, there was something silly that we were going through, kind of a silly exercise. And I stopped and I asked a question and I was tuned in. But if you're not tuned into those moments, they just pass you by. And so the frequency of excellence, the hardest thing I did of writing my book, and you may have, I don't know how you felt this as well, was coming up with the title. Like I had 50 different working titles in my mind, and they all worked a little bit, but my wife kept looking at me going, no, I don't think that's it. And then a friend of mine who I pulled alongside of me to kind of help me with this, we developed the frequency of excellence, pulling again from that idea of John, and then it just went from there. And so it is, to your point, you and I are maybe of similar ages, but it is that AM FM radio dial that kind of is my metaphor that I use.
Man, I love it. And so for younger listeners out there, emerging leaders, first of all, I love that you're here. Thank you. But back in the day before streaming, we had the radio. Yeah. And you would call in and try to, get your favorite song played so you could record it on a tape. Exactly. But that's neither here nor there. You understand Wi-Fi when it doesn't work. You understand Bluetooth and all this stuff. And so the metaphor is strong no matter what age group we're in or what generation we're from. But I love the fact that you started with just absolute truth. Absolute truth. God is everywhere. Yeah. And so often we're not tuned in. The fact that you're telling us, hey, we need to tune in because excellence is everywhere, God is everywhere, makes me immediately feel bad that I'm not probably tuned in. I'm distracted. I'm on the wrong channel. I'm not noticing or paying attention because, how many times a day, and I'll just confess for probably most of the group out there, how many times a day do I pick up my phone? I'm sure it has a report that will tell me how many hours am I where I am
you
just not. You
don't want to see that report, but it's there.
I probably don't. Like I am not paying attention. So what are we probably, let's start with the negative of the reality of where I'm at. What am I probably missing day to day because I'm not tuned in?
Yeah. It is, we can blame that phone, right? The phone is an easy one for us. But, if you and I go back in the day, we didn't have phones, but we were still distracted. And so, for me, I've developed this thing I call the B5 framework. It's funny. I didn't have it for the book. It came about after the book when I would do speaking, people would say, so how do I tune in? And so I developed this thing I call the B5 framework, which is 5 B statements that allow you to be able to tune out those distractions, because our minds are just going lots of different places, right? We're thinking about that call that you've got later, and you're obsessing over, what you're going to say on that call, or you're meeting with a client, a prospective client, and you want to make sure that goes well. And while you're meeting with somebody over coffee in the morning, you're thinking about that later at night, and you're just distracted. Like we just miss those opportunities. And so these B5 frameworks are a way for us to be able to lock ourselves in the moment and be present. So the first one is to be intentional, and that is to surround yourself with excellence. And so I said earlier, I am nothing without the mentors and the people that poured into me in my career. And so I was highly intentional about the people with whom I surrounded myself. So that was one. And when you're with those people, be present. And it's really hard to do, especially these days, but to be present with somebody. Don't let your mind wander. Literally focus in on that person and be locked in on them. When you see somebody do it that's exceptional at it, it inspires you. Like you're like, I want to be more present like that person. And then the third is to be curious. So it's a curiosity. And so the way that you can be present is be curious about the person sitting across from you, and just want to get to learn more and ask open-ended questions, and just, really be curious. I think it's a pre-existing condition. I think we were made to be curious. If you remember back to that, your 4-year-old self, your 4-year-old son or daughter or niece or nephew or neighbor, every day was why, right? They would just wake up in the morning. The first question was why. Before they went to bed at night, it was why. And so I just think we got to rekindle that natural curiosity. We lose it over time. And I think our ego gets in the way of like, I don't need to know that about that person. When as a 4-year-old, we'd want to know that. We got to rekindle that. Yeah. And then being bold is about leaning into our failures. We all have our challenges in our life, and to embrace those and recognize that those are going to be the things that help us move forward. And the last one is to be reflective. And it's the power of the pause, and just taking a moment to allow it to wash over you. We have the prefrontal cortex and we've got the neocortex, short-term memory, long-term memory, and the hippocampus is that bridge. And when you pause, it moves from the front to the back, and it moves to long-term memory, and then you can use it. So it's like that beautiful sunset you saw that you can remember like it happened yesterday, the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen. And it's because you paused. It's because you were reflective on that. then you can pull it back from your memory. So those are the things that I think allow us to be able to tune out those distractions and to be able to focus in on who's around us, and you can pick up on the excellence then that's out there.
Man, I love it. And it's quite easy to think through. How do I be excellent? Well, you need to be these things. And,
Mm-hmm.
granted, I took these notes, but they're really not that difficult. Be intentional in everything that you do, be present, open your eyes and start noticing. You're missing so much. I am missing so much of especially nonverbal communication
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
whenever we don't, we're not present in the moment because we're busy. Be curious, asking those questions. Be bold. Failure is not the end all be all of everything. It's learning that lesson, and then be reflective. The metacognition, thinking about your own thinking, is so huge and important,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
it it takes a humble spirit to truly do that. To say, no matter what happened, whether it was a failure or a good thing, there's still something to learn from it for progress.
100%.
And I just think that, your framework is so, so good. So I hope people pause right here, go back, listen to those
Yeah.
behaviors,
Yeah. Yeah.
really.
Yeah. There's all sorts of different things we can do with
I
the
know.
bees. Yeah.
I love the absolute amount of puns you could probably make with all of those things or visuals. It's so
And
good.
I have.
Yeah, that's great. And that is a wonderful foundation for us to build on. So as we want to tune in like a radio dial into the excellence around us, let's just start with all the other pressures. As a leader dealing with problems, conflicts, constraints, I feel constant pressure to have all the answers, to be all the
Oh,
things.
yeah. Yeah.
But how do I, in other words, tune out that stuff so that I can tune in to everything that you just said of the excellence that's around?
Yeah. I mean, it is a natural tendency for us to want to have the answers. And I've always said three of the most powerful words that a leader can share is, I don't know. It's really powerful, really hard, because I think we all think, we start off here as an associate, and then I make manager, and then I make senior manager, and then I become a leader. And you think as you rise up, that knowledge has to grow with me. And so therefore I have to have all the answers, and I have to quickly have the answers. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do is, because you're not a leader because of your knowledge. You're a leader because somebody saw potential in you, that you could get some people, not you, but you can get other people to do something better than maybe even you did it. And so
Mm.
that's really powerful, and kind of an authentic way to build an interaction in a relationship with somebody, is to say, I don't know. And one of my favorite books, it's actually sits over my shoulder. I don't think you can see it here, but it's called It's Your Ship by a guy by the name of Captain Mike Abrashoff. And I am a Navy guy, so there is an affinity for that. But I heard him speak at a conference probably 25 years ago. And so, but it has stuck with me. It's actually a quick offshoot of that. When I was writing my book, I reached out to people that had written books. I met this guy 25 years ago. He wouldn't remember me from Adam. I was in a long line of people, and he signed my books. And I reached for him and I said, Captain Abrashoff, would you mind talking to me about your book writing process? And he did. It was amazing. Like I just cold reached out to this guy, but he was willing to take my call. The story of the I don't know is he took over the USS Benfold in 1997. It was the lowest performing ship in the Pacific Fleet, like terrible, high attrition, low morale. And when he took it over, he basically knew he had to do things differently. And one of the most impactful things he said is, he walked in and he goes, I don't know what needs to be done on this ship to improve, but y'all do. I need to sit. And he met with 310 sailors in his captain's quarters. But I was an enlisted man. When you get called to the captain's quarters, that's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he got called to the captain's quarters. He broke down that barrier and said, I want you to come in here. And he basically sat with him and said, I want to get to know you personally. So let's build a relationship here. Tell me why you joined the Navy. Tell me about your family. But the most important question he asked is, he said, if you were me, and you've been on this ship now, and if you were me, what would you do differently? Like, what changes would you make? And he listened to them, because he said, I don't know. And he got some unbelievably powerful suggestions that he acted upon. And he would give credit to somebody else. He would say, look, like there was one silly one, is one of the persons said, I really don't like being on this ship because we have to paint it every other month. And I'm a low man on the totem pole. And that means I have to break out the paintbrush and I have to spend my hours painting a ship that shouldn't need to be painted. And he goes, well, we have to keep our ships looking good. So what do you mean you don't have to paint it? And he goes, well, he said, the people that built this ship and engineered this ship put ferrous metals, meaning that when salt water hits a ferrous metal, it rusts. So all I'm doing is putting a Band-Aid on it. I'm just painting over the rust every other month. And it's frustrating because I know that if they built this with stainless steel, I wouldn't have to do it. Captain Abersoff heard that and he said, you know what? Next time we pull into port, we're going to buy a bunch of stainless steel. And we swapped out every fastener they could on the ship. And they didn't paint the ship for 1 year.
Wow.
It was all because he listened and he said, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. And other people did. And he humbled himself, set ego aside, didn't walk in and be like, I'm the captain. You listen to what I say. No, he said, I want to listen to you guys. So sorry, that was a long story, but it's such a powerful reminder that we as leaders don't have to have all the answers. It's okay. Now you got to have some answers. You can't just walk around saying, I don't know, but you don't have to have all the answers, and other people do, and just lean into that and get the most out of your people.
There's two things that I really feel like you gave us in that wonderful story, and it really is a good story, is number one is a permission slip to say, I don't know. And the way in which it's done does matter. There's always an intentionality of, you're asking a great question. I don't know. I'm not sure. Hey, let's dive into this further. There's so many ways that you can really, go that route. But then number two is you gave us the foundation of, hey guys, as leaders, you got to understand that transformation doesn't happen top down. It happens bottom up. The people that are closest to the work, they know and they have ideas. What may seem like an annoyance to them actually could be a root of a much bigger problem that you have, 100%. Like rusting. I mean, I don't know much about ships, but I know I don't want rust on it. I don't want water leaking in. And so it changed everything about that. And so you gave us the permission slip, but you also gave us the foundation of how transformation actually happens.
Yeah.
And I want to press into, you said this earlier, and then it kind of came back in that story, is you were talking about really noticing, be present, paying attention, noticing the small things. Like you had mentioned earlier, somebody mumbling under their breath, and you stopped, paused, and leaned into that with some curiosity to press further. And that was a huge way that you were tuning into excellence because you were learning from those small moments.
Yeah.
And I think there's such a misnomer that things happen in big moments. Let's just go with marriage. Let's do a parallel of, hey, it's Valentine's Day or it's Christmas. I'm going to give this big gift, but the rest of the year I'm ignoring my spouse. That's actually harming the relationship and it does nothing. And I think sometimes as leaders, we can think, oh, I had a team building event once a year and boom, it's going to make this a big thing. And we kind of hang our hat on that.
Yeah.
And so here you are, you have a captain. I just can't even imagine. I mean, he's leading people, and I don't know much about the 90s, but there was a lot happening in the 90s in the military. And he's leading people who have signed up to give their life for our country. That's a lot of pressure. And yet he took the time, small moments, one-on-one, constant, to have these conversations. And so talk to us about big moments versus small moments, because so many of us hang our hat. We try to tune into big moments, and that's actually the wrong frequency based upon some stuff you've said.
Yeah, we focus on that rah-rah speech. We focus on the mission statement and our vision and what we're going to do. And those are important. Don't get me wrong, but it's what happens in the in-betweens that is the really important. And so one postscript that I failed to mention, he took the ship in 1 year to be the number one ship in the Navy. It went from the lowest performing ship in the Pacific Fleet to the number one ship in the Navy. And all it was is he empowered that front line, as you said there. Like you got to lean into that. And so, that's the story that I'll tell you. So the small moments, and this is about tuning in. So I was with a mentor of mine. I was working for an organization. I was up in New Jersey. We had a meeting the next week in New York City. Big client, one of the premier clients in our firm. We were going to meet with them, and I was prepping with one of my mentors, and he was going to be leading the meeting. And he asked me a question, and he said, so, okay, if they ask you this, how are you going to respond? And I went on this long roundabout, filling the words with these big buzzwords. And I was just, and I kind of saw him lean back, and he just kind of whispered something. And he just said, I didn't know what he said. He just kind of mumbled something. And so when I finished, and he was very kind, like he wasn't trying to interrupt me. And I looked at him and I said, Mark, what did you say there? And he goes, I said, et loqueris ad. And I said, I don't know what that means. And he goes, it's a Latin phrase. And I go, Mark, I don't speak pig Latin, let alone Latin, like help me. And he goes, it means speak with a purpose. And I said, what did you mean when you muttered that? And he goes, you need to have a thesis to your words. You need to have a purpose of where you're going through words. You need to treat them as a currency. And he goes, you were all over the place saying lots of different words. You needed to have a kind of a finite point of what you were doing. And so it was just again, I could have missed that, right? I could have gone into that meeting. And when I got asked that question, I could have, done the old Michael Scott improvisation, and I could have talked all the way around it and never really meant anything. But I didn't, because I had that kind of career changing whisper that I picked up on. And I was present. I could have, again, not been there. I could have been annoyed by him whispering something while I'm trying to speak, but I was curious. And so I leaned in and I said, Mark, I don't know what that means. And so it was a career changing moment for me, because from that moment forward, I realized that I didn't have a thesis to my words. I wasn't speaking with a purpose. I was too all over the place with it. And, that mentor shaped me. And so it's that small moment, that wasn't like a Mark, pounding his fist on the table saying, I'm going to share a life lesson with you. Listen. It was just a very small moment. But from that point forward, I communicated differently. I communicated more effectively. At least I hope I did. All came because of that very small moment.
If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. And also, please rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership. And through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. Now, back to the show. So true. And I can't tell you, I sometimes get frustrated and disappointed with how systems work in organizations. And I've been in several organizations, especially in coaching or, in some sort of proximity. And let's go with feedback as evaluation and feedback. You usually get it once a year, and it's not detailed or specific whatsoever. And I think a lot of times we think that's a big moment. I'm going to go in, I'm going to be evaluated. And then it's usually tied to a bonus or something like that. It's tied to my identity. Hopefully not. But a lot of people it is. And whenever you go in and you're like, great job, keep it up. Like, that's not growing you at all. However, that whisper in a moment, like, that grew you so much so that we're still talking about it today. Yeah. And the lesson that you learned, I have 2 comments on it. So you learned about have a purpose with your words and a thesis. My first thought, my background is education, is every English teacher everywhere is like, yes, of course, you have to have a thesis and a purpose. So thank you, English teachers all over. My second one is, here's a confession. I'm an auditory processor. I think out loud. And man, is that wasteful for a lot of people's time. And that is something that I have to work towards. And I love that you said our words, it's a currency. Yeah. Man, if we really put our feet in other people's shoes of, do they need to hear all of this? Every thought that I have? The answer is no. Yeah. Time is such a constraint. We only get 24 hours a day. How much breath am I wasting pontificating? And that's what we do in a lot of meetings too. Oh my gosh, let me sound smart and pontificate all these things and never solve the problem. That's every meeting ever. And I feel like that feedback that you got in a whisper, oh my goodness, a Latin whisper, mind you, is so huge to changing the trajectory of your leadership. Your words have purpose. So good. I have now heard you mention mentor multiple times. I want to dive into that. Like, you have mentioned that you've had mentors. Is this a formal thing? Like, you walk up to somebody, hello, would you be my mentor? Will you grow me as a professional? Talk to us about what a mentor is and how in the world you even get a relationship where you would call someone your mentor.
Yeah, mentorship is the foundation of everything that I am. And to your question, no. I would tell you, I've had 50 different mentors in my career. Not in any one of those situations did I go to them and say, will you mentor me? And I believe that it's a gap that exists today. There was a study that was done several years ago that said that 80% of people know that mentorship is important. Now, I don't know who the 20% are that don't think it's important, but that's for another topic. But 80% of people know that a mentor is important, yet only 37% of people actually have a mentor. And that gap that exists is a problem. And we've got to close that gap today. And I think it's because people are looking for a formalization. They're looking for a knighting ceremony. They're looking for it to be, kind of like a certificate you're going to hang on your wall that said Bethany mentored Scott, right? And it has to be this formalized thing. And it's not. I would bet also, so I have those 50 mentors. Again, never asked them. If you went and interviewed all 50 of those, probably 40 of them would say, no, I didn't mentor Scott. Like, I worked with Scott, I enjoyed working with Scott, but beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. For me, if I saw somebody as a mentor and it inspired me to do something that they were doing and I did something differently as a result of that, I don't need a certificate for the wall. I'm better today as a result of working with that person. So they don't even need to know that they were a mentor to me. I think, again, I think they all would say, yes, I did enjoy working with Scott, but I view that and I hold that relationship so dear to me because I view them as a mentor. And so, it doesn't have to be overly formalized. It just needs to be somebody that you see that is doing something that you aspire to do, or being somebody that you aspire to be. Surround yourself with them. Don't go up to them. It was funny. I was speaking at a university a couple of weeks ago, and I said to them, I was like, don't go up to somebody in a first meeting and say, will you mentor me? I said, that's like going on a first date with somebody and saying, hey, will you marry me? Like, they're going to go off in the other direction. Like, that's too formal and it's too soon. Just go to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I really like how you did something there. Can we go grab coffee? I'd love to pick your brain. Who's not going to say yes to that? Right. And then follow up with a lunch, follow up, whatever, but just surround yourself with those people and pick up on them. And it's not like I would sign up on projects. If I saw somebody that was a great leader or a great salesperson, I would sign up to be on their projects. And I'd be like, hey, I want to work with that person. And I would just sit there and be a sponge, and I would watch what they did. And I would just take all that information in, and it was modifying, using that B5 framework. It was modifying who I was. And I was taking bits and pieces from all those different things and adding them into my being.
You've given me such clarity. And here's the deal. Like I've read books, like I'm in the leadership space. I love diving into it, but I never really thought about it this way. Is so often we that are hungry to grow will treat a mentor like a therapist. Like, what do you think I should do? And you're asking for advice when really you go out and you lean into, who do you want to emulate? Who do you want to be like? Who do you see that's producing fruit that you want to grow in your life and your leadership? And then you go ask them questions about how they did that and what they did and what they're thinking. It's a complete reverse of the therapist. I'm using air quotes here for those listening, like the therapy of, what do you think I should do? And help me analyze this. It's the opposite of you being hungry, of asking them about their thought processes.
Yeah.
And I love that you gave me that new kind of definition, even though I've read about it and I understand and I talk about mentorship. It's a completely new way for me to think about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Curiosity is at the heart of it, because as you're watching them, you can see it, but if you don't understand what was their thinking behind it, then you miss out on something. And so you got to ask those follow-up questions and just double click on it and just go deeper and be curious. And that's, I think, one of the most important things we can be is curious these days.
Oh, I love it. And that's obviously why it's one of your B things, right? Be intentional, be present, be curious, be bold, and be reflective. I wrote them down because I'm not missing that nugget. All right. So now let's talk about, as we've learned about frequency, why that's important. Excellence is all around you. So is God, because this podcast talks about faith as well. We need to tune into it. We've talked about big moments. We've talked about small moments. We've talked about mentorship. At the end of the day, what do you hope readers walk away with after reading Frequency of Excellence?
Yeah, it's to pick up on those small moments, to be constantly, at the root of the Frequency of Excellence is a growth mindset. And I know in your book, I remember, reading, I think you talked about Dr. Carol Dweck, who kind of popularized that term of a growth mindset. When you have a growth mindset, you just wake up every day saying, I want to be better today than I was yesterday. And that can be a lifelong thing. And so that's all I want people to do, is to recognize that I'm a storyteller by nature. And so that's, you'll read, if you read my book, it's very short chapters. They're meant to be kind of quick hits of different stories and lessons that were shared with me, like at Lo Quiero Sad, like the folding of the underwear, which is the boot camp story that I briefly touched on earlier. Like, I found excellence in the smallest and some might say silliest things, but they had massive impacts on me. But I only had them because I had a growth mindset, because I wanted to be better than I was the day before. And so as I'm folding laundry and folding my underwear in the Navy, I'm learning through that process because I'm curious and I'm asking questions. Why are we doing this? This is dumb. But in those small moments you can grow. And so, my encouragement for everybody would be just continue to try to focus on your growth. always be better tomorrow than you were today. And
Mm-hmm.
just, that's really at the heart of it. And just be on the lookout for those opportunities because they come in the silliest of forms.
Mm-hmm. And I love, I really feel like, and this is just me generalizing, overgeneralizing, really. I feel like we're just such a society of complainers. And you may start there with your first thought, but it doesn't have to be your thought always. Like you're folding underwear. I love it. That's such a good story. Why are we doing this? This is dumb. First of all, that made me think of every teenager ever that I've ever been around. Why are we doing this? This is dumb. And you may start there, but your whole point is that growth mindset of you don't stay there. Okay, well,
Yeah.
how can I get better at this? How can I learn something from this? You're asking such open-ended, curious questions
Yeah.
that changed from a complaint to, man, I actually got something out of it. Something as
Yeah.
simple as folding underwear.
Yeah.
I love
I
it. So
mean,
good.
so a bit of the story, I'll just do a quick aside here. So I went to boot camp. I was 18 years old. I went to help pay for college. And so I went to boot camp. And in the second week, you've already learned how to shine your shoes, how to march in formation, all the various things that I expected. What I didn't expect is they handed us a binder and said, okay, we're going to learn to fold our clothes. And I thought, this is just crazy. And so we're folding our dungarees and our dress blues and our dress whites and our underwear. And at the end of it, I was annoyed, and they call that the static, right? So when you're not tuned in, all you're getting is static, back to the AM FM kind of
Yeah.
comparison and metaphor that we were using earlier. I had static. I was annoyed, but I could tune out the static because I asked a question. I said, Chief, why does Uncle Sam care how I fold my underwear? And he looked me dead in the eye, and I'll never forget it. And he looked at me and he said, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Oh,
That was it. And so that was the lesson that came from that is he then said, when you go out into the fleet, you're going to be asked to pre-flight a naval aircraft. And if you do that halfway, if you don't do that with precision and excellence and follow the rules as we're going to give them to you, lives are going to be in danger. And he said, so it's not about folding underwear. It's about living your life with excellence and precision. And that as an 18-year-old kid, because I was present, because I was curious and followed up on that, I had a life lesson. And my kids and anybody I've ever led got tired of me saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. It's in the small little things that you do. And it came from a silly little exercise I was going through in the second week of boot camp.
yeah. It's the underwear story. I love it.
Yeah.
And it anchors that one small moment impacted not only you and your life, but now your family and your children.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good. So you've literally been from the Navy to executive leadership. You just gave us an amazing leadership lesson about underwear of how you do anything is how you do everything. So great. I'm going to write that down as a mantra for my future and my parenting. But is there any other leadership lesson that stands out? Just open-ended question. Anything else you want to share with our listeners of a leadership lesson that you've learned?
Yeah. I was so fortunate. Outside of the Navy, the first employer I had was a company called Hewitt Associates. It is the foundation of who I am. I was surrounded. It was like a daily master's class in excellence. The best communicators, the best salespeople. That's where I had the Whisper, the Et Loquaris ad came from that organization. And I was there 17 years. It is who I am, today. But the number one thing I took from, and I kind of want to do this survey of former people that worked there and see if they have the same view that I did of why it was such a unique place to work. But I believe it was the humility. The humility of
Mm,
our leaders was palpable. Like they never walked into a room as I got all the answers. They were big into the I don't know. They just led with humility, and it was never about them. It was about the firm. It was about the organization, and it was never about them. And so that would be my encouragement for any leader out there is it's not about you. Like it's not about your position. Your job as a leader now is to get the most out of the people that are quote unquote underneath you, the people that report to you, the people that are looking to you for direction. And you don't have to have all the answers. All you have to do is you have to inspire them to want to do something that they don't think they can do on their own. And that's what I felt at Hewitt Associates every single day was the leadership there was just humble enough to say, this isn't about me. This is about the team. And how can we work together to, get something to be better for our customers?
man. All right, for everyone listening, that's your next prayer request. Is every day just pray, God, empty me of myself. It's
Yeah.
not about me. How can
It's
I
not
serve
about
others?
us.
Because that's why I'm
Yeah.
here. So good. All right. So as we come to a close, I just love everything that you've talked about, tuning into the excellence around us. But what are some key takeaways for our listeners that they can actually apply to their leadership? Because you've had such great stories, so many good things. So just hit us with a quick recap. What are the key takeaways?
Yeah, I think to follow that B5 framework, I think if you can kind of have that in your mind of that's when you can pick up on these small things to just always be intentional. It's the iron sharpens iron. It's that wonderful Bible verse that you need to surround yourself with excellence. That's how you're going to get better. And then when you are with them, be present. Don't let yourself get distracted and be worrying about what you're picking up for dinner, that night. Just be focused and be present with the people that you're around. And then be curious. Always ask follow-up questions. Lean into those questions. That's critically important. I think as a leader, curiosity needs to be found in a lot of people. And then be bold. You're going to have your challenges. You're going to have your failures. Embrace those times. Embrace the times. I know it sounds terrible when you're in the midst of that storm. Embrace it. Don't waste the suffering. I saw a great quote the other day say, "Don't waste the suffering. Let it happen. It's going to happen. You don't want it to happen, but lean into it and learn from it and be better tomorrow than you were today as a result of that." And most importantly is be reflective. Don't miss the opportunities when you see excellence. And if you don't pause, you will miss it and it'll go by the wayside. So if you follow the B5 framework, I think you can start to pick up on the excellence and that dial starts to become more clear that you can tune out all that static and just tune into the frequency.
Oh, so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, now let's go the opposite. What is one poor decision you would warn our leaders to avoid? Like, come on, leaders, don't do this one thing. You're better than that.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm getting caught up in ourselves and reading our own press clippings. When you become a leader, you're so happy to have hit that pinnacle. But again, I go back to it ain't about you. It's about the team that you're leading. It's about getting the most out of them. And I think, the times that I have gotten myself in trouble is when I thought it was about me. And, I write a lot about my book, about the failures I've had in my career. And I embrace it because I don't want to waste that suffering that came as a result of it. And some of those came as a result because I got in my own way, that I really thought I was all that in a bag of chips, and I wasn't. And I lost sight of it. And when I get reminded of it, sometimes painfully, but I get reminded and I'm brought back to the kind of the true north and understanding where I need to be focused on.
So good. Poor decision to be focused on self. Don't do that.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, where can our listeners go to learn more about you, your work, and where can they grab a copy of your book, Frequency of Excellence?
It is on Amazon, it is on Barnes and Noble, any of the online book resellers. It's there. And so you can find me there. It's called Frequency of Excellence. And then also my website is scottmillson.com. And that's MILLSON 2 L's. And then probably most is follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, put a lot of things out there, a lot of my thoughts, ideas, stories, etc. So yeah, I'd love to connect with somebody. I love it when I hear from somebody that says, "Hey, I was listening to you on a podcast." Like, it makes my day. And so thank you, Bethany, for doing what you do. And I know this is not easy for you to pull all these together and to ask great, insightful questions. So thank you for helping make other people better.
Oh man. Well, I love this. I feel like I get to learn from amazing people all day long, and I love learning. It's why I went into education. I love being a student. So thank you for your work. Thank you for reminding us and giving us that visual of excellence is everywhere. We just need to tune into it. So thank you for the work, guys. Follow him out. All those links will be in the show notes. Follow him on LinkedIn. I do. And Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Bethany. Take care.
All right, guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Proverbs chapter 9, verse 9a. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be wiser still.